Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the Hindu News Analysis dated 29th December 2024. And in today's session, these are the 10 very important topics that I have taken up for discussion. The topics range from GS Paper 1 to GS Paper 3. And to make the discussion comprehensive, I've also taken one more article from Indian Express as well. It has been done in order to ensure that this will be a one-stop destination for all of your current affairs requirements to clear and ace the civil services examination. If you like this initiative, do not forget to hit the like button. And if you're yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Before I start the discussion, I have a very important announcement to make. Those aspirants who want to ace the examination for 2026 civil services, here is the offer for you. You can enter into any of these classroom programs. You need to subscribe to our programs. And if you subscribe to 18 months program, you will not only get access to the English, Hindi as well as the bilingual classes, the prelims as well as the mains test series, as well as mentorship assistance. If you do not clear the exam in 2026, we will extend your subscription by 12 more months without taking a single rupee from you for that extension. But to avail this, you will have to use the IAS English code, and the second one, you will have to meet certain conditions. For further details, do check out the details, the link for which is provided in the description. Let me start the discussion now. The first important article, why inflation will matter more in 2025. Here are certain very important points. Point number 1, India achieved a very good growth rate for the previous financial year. That is, for the financial year 24, India was able to achieve more than 8% GDP growth rate. To be very precise here, the growth rate was 8.2%. In the financial year 25, for the first quarter, we registered a GDP growth rate of 6.7%. Although this was the lowest growth rate in the last 5 quarters, the government basically said this has happened because of elections. Because during elections, lot of focus of the government, even in terms of policy making, etc., there is a diversion, investment is affected, even the private sector is worried about who is going to win the elections, who is going to form the government, etc. So that is the precise reason. During this quarter, the argument was the growth rate has been lower because of elections. Then the second quarter results were announced. For the second quarter, we achieved a growth rate of 5.4%. And this was a shocking outcome. Reason being, the 5.4% growth rate for the second quarter is the lowest in the last 7 quarters. It is the lowest in the last 7 quarters. That is, basically, I'm just rounding off. In the last 2 years, this is the lowest GDP growth rate achieved by Indian economy. At this point of time, what is the argument? You need to reduce interest rates so that the lending, the credit issuance in the market will increase, and this will basically promote higher growth. It will pick up the growth of the Indian economy. All of this is happening on one side. What is happening on the other side? Reserve Bank of India, where the governor was Mr. Shaktikanta Das until very recently. The RBI kept on quoting the higher retail inflation rate, that is CPI. If you look at the graphical representation provided here, for majority period of the month, for majority period of this financial year, the inflation rate, specifically the headline inflation, that is CPI, retail inflation rate, has been in the range of 6%. For certain months, it has come in the range of 4%. But for majority period of the time, it has been above 4% and nearer to 6%. In fact, this is until October 2024. What has been the retail inflation rate for the month of November? For the month of November, the inflation rate, although has cooled down from 6.2%, it has cooled down to 5.4%. But many experts have warned that compared to the previous year, it is much higher. So Reserve Bank of India started basically pointing the fingers at retail inflation and said that we will not be reducing interest rates. And that is the precise reason in the last 20 months, RBI has not reduced the repo rate. But very recently, in the latest monetary policy meeting, they actually reduced cash reserve ratio. The CRR was actually reduced by 50 basis points from 4.5% to 4%. And this is expected to increase, right? Basically increase the money supply in the economy. Right? But although the argument was completely different, rather than increasing money supply, RBI said they wanted to ensure that sufficient liquidity will be there in the banking sector. Now, it is also said this is one of the reasons. Again, all of this is in the discussion. This is one of the reasons why Government of India did not give an extension to the former, or let's say the most recent RBI governor, and basically chose another person to replace him as the RBI governor. Now, these are certain important points. In addition to this, you need to understand one more very important point here. Yesterday, I was reading a research paper associated with India's inflation rate. India's inflation rate. And the research paper basically talked about a paradox in India. A kind of a paradox in India. And why I'm quoting all of this? Whenever there are, let's say, descriptive questions associated with inflation rate, you should be quoting these kind of case studies. So the research paper basically spoke about the paradox in India. What is the paradox here? India on one side is the highest producer of agriculture commodities. Specifically, if you talk about this, the cereal production in India is very, very high. And from one year to the next year, you will keep on reading this in the newspaper, India is achieving record output. India is able to achieve highest production from the previous year or compared to previous year. So on one side, the argument is if you can record or if you can achieve record output in agriculture sector, specifically in the context of rice and wheat, why is that cereal inflation or food inflation in India is very high? All of you able to understand the paradoxical situation here? Is it okay? On one side, you say that you are producing the highest food grains in the world. But on the other side, you are basically facing very high amount of food inflation. Why? Many will basically say, sir, the food inflation is mainly on account of, let's say, the vegetables. Yes, to some extent, you are correct. To some extent, yes, you are correct. In many of the months, vegetables have contributed to inflation. But please understand, in addition to the vegetables contributing to inflation, there is also a problem with the policy of Government of India, which is contributing to cereal inflation. How so? When you look at the CPI basket, when you look at the CPI basically stands for Consumer Price Index. When you look at the CPI basket, you have around 46%, around 46 because the exact number is 45.8%, for which the weightage is provided for a basket of basically the food and beverages. So food and beverages will carry the highest weightage under CPI, and that is around 46%. But within this, if you basically try to find out how much is a weightage given for, let's say, rice and wheat. How much is the weightage given for rice and wheat? It is somewhere in the range of around 7%. Around 7%, that is out of the total CPI, around 7% weightage is given for rice and wheat. In addition to the rice and wheat, many of the commodities, many of the products which are manufactured in the market using rice and wheat are also considered in the basket of CPI. So in a nutshell, there is certain amount of, right, let's say important weightage or substantial weightage that is provided for rice and wheat in case of CPI. Point number one. Point number two, when there is so much of production of rice and wheat in India, the argument is the production is increasing, no doubt, but at the same point of time, the government procurement, understand this, the government procurement as well as exports are also increasing. Is the point clear? The government procurement as well as exports are also increasing. And the research paper basically says the rise, that is the increased rate of production, is smaller, is lesser compared to the exports as well as the procurement done by the government. In a nutshell, imagine if the production, again just to make you understand, if the production increases by 2%, but the exports are increasing much faster, the procurement done by Government of India for, let's say, midday meals scheme, under NFSA, for buffer stock, etc., that procurement is also increasing at a very faster pace. And as a result of this, there is a higher shortage of supply of these food grains in the market. And when you see there is, right, let's say demand higher, but the supply is not matching the demand for these kind of food grains, the price levels in the domestic market will start increasing. This is the reason, I hope you understand this argument, this is the reason the paper argues that you are seeing higher cereal inflation despite having record production of rice and wheat in the domestic market. And if you're wondering, sir, why are we exporting this? We should stop the export. No, you cannot directly stop the exports of these kind of food grains because in the international market, you are one of the major supplier. Point number one. Point number two, under WTO, when the discussions were being conducted regarding, let's say, export of agriculture commodities, procurement by international agencies from the domestic market to supply to poorer countries, India basically said we are not going to impose any kind of a restriction on this. In addition to this, if you impose restriction on the export, your export earnings will be hit. And in addition to all of this, you also have agriculture export policy, AEP, agriculture export policy, under which you want to increase the value of exports, specifically agriculture exports, to go beyond $50 billion. So these are all the reasons why basically the paper says you are seeing a paradox in India. You are looking at a paradox in India. On one side, higher production, at the same point of time, higher inflation rate or higher cereal inflation rate. So these are the two very important things I want you to understand from this article. This is mentioned in the article. This is what is mentioned in the article, but I want you to understand this argument as well. And you can quote this, by the way, whenever you write the mains paper as a case study to basically prove that even the government policies can contribute to inflationary trends in the domestic market. Done? So this is first article. Associated with this discussion, I've given an MCQ. Consider the following statements. Cereals have around 46% in the CPI basket. CPI is published by Ministry of Commerce. And the third one is CPI and WPI basket includes goods and services. Now, before I go forward, attempt it. Even if you don't know, don't worry. I will give you the key answer at the end of the discussion. I just want to add one more point here. Regarding CPI, very recently the government has announced that they want to change the base year of CPI. Understand this particular point as well. They want to change the base year of CPI. Right now, the base year of CPI is how much? 2012. And the government of India wants to change this to 2024. This is a proposal. It can be done in the coming days. If you're writing exams either for 2025 or 26, this point will become very, very important for you. Okay. So this is a discussion related to first article. Second article, troubled waters. There is a discussion on Panama Canal. very recently, the president of USA, the next president of USA, who will basically take over the charge from Mr. Joe Biden from January 20th, in a statement, let's say a statement has argued that the USA government should take over the control over Panama Canal. The government of USA should have control over the Panama Canal. Of course, this is a statement which has been provided by Mr. Donald Trump. What are the arguments in this case? Please understand. The concept of Panama Canal, essentially, it is a waterway. Right? Essentially, it's a canal which has been constructed by USA but handed over. The management of this, the administration of this, etc. was handed over to Panama in the year 1999. 31st December 1999. So essentially what has happened historically and what is the importance of this article? Let's try and dissect it. Panama earlier was under the control of Colombia. But with the assistance of United States of America, in 1903, Panama got independence. Even America supported the independence and provided assistance in strategic way and recognized independence announced by Panama. After this, there was a point of discussion regarding development of Panama Canal. Understand this. The Panama Canal, the development of this or the construction of this initially was started by French authorities. It was started by French authorities. But later on, they realized that it is very difficult to construct because of a difficult geographical terrain, and they faced a lot of loss of lives, and the expenditure was also very high. So essentially, the French authorities who started the development of Panama Canal basically gave it up. And if you're wondering, sir, what is the importance of this canal? Why everybody wants to focus on the Panama Canal? Please understand, whenever you talk about international trade, that is global trade, it is mainly done through, right, let's say using sea routes. You will also have air transportation. You will have mainly the sea routes using which the transportation is done. For example, if something has to be transported from India or from China, etc., it makes more sense for the ships or the vessels to take the route which basically crosses this particular Panama Canal or Panama waterway rather than going all the way round like this. Because if you take a longer route, which is in the discussion right now, because some of these vessels which used to pass through, I'm not talking about Panama Canal, but I'm talking about Suez Canal now, right? The Red Sea issue. When these vessels were passing through the Red Sea, there were terrorist attacks, right? Houthis attacked it. And because of that, the vessels started taking a longer route. And when you take a longer route, one, the time taken for transportation automatically will start increasing. The cost associated with the transportation will increase. If these are the kind of commodities which are required, right? Let's say there is an emergency requirement, but because of a longer route, the supply will be delayed. For example, in case of India, the availability of fertilizers, one of the reasons why the fertilizer prices or why there's a black marketing of fertilizers in India is because of delayed transportation, because the vessels are taking a longer route. So earlier, the vessels used to take a longer route going right via like this. But now, essentially, the argument was we should construct a waterway which will basically connect Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. And this will reduce the time taken for transportation, cost taken for transportation, etc. will automatically come down. With that objective, we started developing this waterway. Today, we call this as a Panama Canal. Like I earlier mentioned, it was started by French. They left it. They did not develop or complete the project. Later on, this project was handed over to American authorities. And the American authorities developed this particular canal. And later on, because they realized there is a huge economic potential, there were frictions between America as well as Panama. And finally, in the year 1977, because please understand, the canal started operating in 1914. There were frictions between the Panamanian authorities as well as American authorities. As a result of that, finally in 1977, agreements were signed between the Panama as well as USA. According to this agreement, now, right, the authority or the right to operate, maintain, right, let's say Panama Canal would be transferred to the government of Panama. And the government in Panama set up, right, understand this, authority by the name of Panama Canal Authority. Panama Canal Authority, which would basically take over the management operations of this particular canal. Story is clear for all of you? Story is clear why the American president is arguing that we should take over the management, we should control the Panama Canal. Now, what is the importance of this canal? Why USA is targeting this? Two important reasons. Out of the total, let's say the transit, out of total cargo that is transited through this particular canal, majority of it is done by America. More than 75% of it is done by America. Around 21% of it is done by China, followed by Japan. Right, point number one. Point number two, the American president says, or the new president basically says, or president-elect says, risingly, these, right, let's say ports which are there in the Panama Canal, these are being given to Chinese companies, which means the Chinese companies are present in the region very nearby to USA, right? And this basically is compounded by the fact that back in the year 2017 and 2018, the Panama government cut all of its diplomatic ties with Taiwan and basically entered into new age of relationship with China. So two arguments which have been put forward are, one, right, Chinese presence is there in these ports, so we want to take over the management. And second, right, understand this, the charges which are being imposed on Panama, on the American, right, let's say the vessels which are going to America, or let's say the goods which are entering into America, the tariffs which are being imposed have been proposed to be increased from 2025. Now, why there is a proposal to increase the tariff? What is the argument? Why Panama Authority has argued that the tariffs will be increased on the vessels which are crossing the canal? Here, please understand this. Like I earlier mentioned, it's a man-made waterway. Man-made waterway. No doubt, engineering marvel. You should see how these particular waterways have been built. This particular waterway has been built. What is the mechanism? Right? So, it's an engineering marvel. But the problem with this waterway is that there are multiple lakes. There are multiple lakes which will supply water to one man-made lake here, that is Gatun Lake. And using the water in the Gatun Lake, basically we ensure that the vessels are crossing the canal. Now, right, understand this, because you require the waters in the lake, if the water available in the lakes goes down, even the water availability in the Gatun Lake will go down. And when the water availability here will go down, essentially higher number of vessels cannot be allowed to transit using the canal. Heavier, right, vessels cannot be allowed to transit using this particular canal. And this has been seen very, very recently. In 22 and 23, the availability in lakes, that is the water availability, and this water availability also depends on rainfall. It depends on rainfall. Just like, let's say, La Nina, El Nino will have an impact in India in terms of, let's say, how much rainfall we receive. Same impact is seen even in case of this country. When there is, let's say, El Nino, which was seen very recently, when there is a higher intensified impact of El Nino, there is a lesser rainfall here. And when there is a lesser rainfall, the water availability has gone down in the lakes, and this has affected the amount of water availability in the canal. This has reduced the number of number of vessels which are allowed to pass through. And a solution to this has already been proposed. The authorities, ACP, has proposed to develop a new basin by the name of Rio-Indo Basin. Remember all these names. Rio-Indo Basin has been proposed to be developed in the next 4 years, where the water availability here will be taken to ensure that there is sufficient water in the Panama Canal to ensure all the vessels are passing by. But for all of this, it requires money. And that is the precise reason ACP says, come 2025, we are going to increase the tariffs. And this has been criticized by the president-elect, Mr. Donald Trump. And that's the reason he is arguing that we should simply take over the management of the Panama Canal. And as expected, the government of Panama has opposed it, has criticized these kind of statements. In addition to all of this, please remember the two very important treaties which have been signed between the government of Panama as well as the government of USA. Because of these two treaties, the ownership, the management, administration of Panama Canal has been transferred to the government of Panama. Done? So these are certain very important points associated with a very important current affairs topic, right? Please make a note of them. Associated with this, one more MCQ here. Consider the following statements. The Panama Canal connects Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. It is managed by ACP. It was developed by French authorities, which was handed over to Panama in 1999. How many of the statements are true? Just give it a try. If you do not know, don't worry, I'll discuss this at the end. Next important article, there is one more river linking projects that is being discussed in India by the name of Betwa River Linking Project. What are the important points? Listen to me very carefully. The announcement of a Betwa River Linking Project has been done many years ago. But the actual approval for the implementation of the project was done in 2021 by the cabinet, and very recently the project has been inaugurated by the Prime Minister on 100th anniversary of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the former Prime Minister. Now, what are the important points here? There are certain regions in India where you will see there is a huge amount of, right, let's say, the river water flowing. Okay, the river waters are very high in these regions. But at the same point of time, there are also certain other regions where the rivers are there, but there is no sufficient water in the rivers. There is a scarcity. There is very less river water availability. And in certain regions where there is excess river water or surplus river water, especially during rainy season, you will see there is, right, let's say, the flood-like situation or floods which are, right, damaging the crops, affecting the livelihoods of the people. And on the other side, in the exact opposite region, the agriculture is not able to get access to sufficient water. The people residing there do not have access to continuous supply of drinking water, etc. In order to balance the situation, in order to address the situation, the government has proposed river linking projects. River linking projects. And this concept of river linking project was announced in the form of National Prospective Plan. National, right, remember the name? National Perspective Plan. Okay, under this, the river linking project was announced. And, right, as per this particular plan, there will be 30 projects which would be developed. 30 projects, essentially river linking projects. Out of these 30 projects, 16 projects are basically being developed or being planned under peninsular rivers, and remaining 14 are essentially associated with the Himalayan rivers. Now, one of these particular project in the peninsular component, it is essentially the Betwa River Linking Project. So, this particular project has been announced many years ago. In fact, there was an agreement which was signed between the state of Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, as well as the central government, that is the union government, back in the year 2005. The agreement was signed. But then the question arises, if the agreement was signed in 2005, why the project is being implemented now? Why there is so much of a delay? Please understand, out of these rivers, right, understand this, one of the river, basically the Betwa river, here is the Betwa river, right, the map for it, it flows in Uttar Pradesh and then enters into Madhya Pradesh. And here is the Ken river, which again, right, basically flows through Uttar Pradesh and then enters Madhya Pradesh. When there is a river which flows into multiple states like this, there will be certain season where there is a very high amount of water availability, and there will be certain season, right, let's say during summer season where water availability is lesser. So there is always a dispute between the states regarding the water sharing. There is always a dispute regarding the water sharing. Same kind of dispute existed between the state of Uttar Pradesh as well as Madhya Pradesh. So one problem was water sharing dispute. Second problem was essentially allocation of expenditure for the project. And not just the allocation, even getting approvals from certain ministries was very difficult. So because of these kinds of reasons or the problems, although the project was announced many years ago, the implementation had been stalled. But later on, the government of India again entered into a tripartite agreement. Tripartite, essentially three parties. The government of India, the state government of Madhya Pradesh, as well as the state government of Uttar Pradesh. And according to the plan which has been proposed under this particular tripartite agreement, now these two rivers are being connected. So the argument here is, once the connection is done between the Ken river as well as Betwa river, right, once the connection is done, the amount of excess amount of, let's say, the water which is present in Ken will be directed to Betwa river. There is a higher amount of water here. We will establish a linkage. We will develop a linkage like this, and whatever excess amount of water is there here will basically ensure that some of this water will enter or will be added to Betwa river. As a result of this, right, there are multiple number of, let's say, benefits. What are the benefits? Point number one, the government basically argues that once we basically channel the excess river water and ensure that this excess river water will go and basically add to the water in Betwa like this, the agriculture sector will be supported. Right? Lakhs of agriculture fields, that is the farm pieces which are involved in the agriculture sector, now they'll be able to get access to irrigation facility. This is the first advantage. Second advantage, when you develop this kind of a project, there are certain regions where the families are finding it very difficult to get access to drinking water facility. Now, we will ensure that sufficient drinking water facility will also be made available to lakhs of households or lakhs of people. In fact, according to government estimates, because of this linkage of the project, more than 60 lakh people are expected to get access to drinking water facility. Point number three, when you develop these kind of projects and there is a dam which is going to be constructed here, essentially you will be able to harness the water and basically convert this, convert this into electricity. And production of electricity is also one of the outcomes of this particular project. So these are the three very important outcomes which are associated with this river linking project. At the same point of time, earlier I mentioned there was a delay in the implementation of the project because we were finding it very difficult in order to give approvals. The governments were facing certain criticism here. What are the criticisms? Let's go point by point. The criticism against this particular project are, first one, when you develop this kind of project, that is essentially you divert water, you construct a dam, etc., there will be loss of ecosystem. There will be loss of certain, let's say, the forest. For example, in this case, one of the areas that they're targeting, understand this, there is a tiger reserve, right? There is a tiger reserve, Panna Tiger Reserve. Remember the name. There is a Panna Tiger Reserve in Madhya Pradesh, And through this particular tiger reserve, the water that is this river, that is Ken River, is passing through. Now, when you construct a dam, right, and the water is the river water is passing through the tiger reserve like this, don't you think this construction of the dam will require, let's say, elimination of some of the trees? You'll have to uproot some of the trees, so there will be loss of forest. And because the tiger reserve, and an important one at that point of time, there will be a problem with, let's say, protection of tiger population as well. So ecological concerns. This is the biggest criticism associated with this river project. Second concern is, your argument is there is a surplus water in one river, there is a less water in another river. I want to transport some of this water into the second river so that there is a balanced supply. But your assumption has been made on a data which has been collected very long time ago. You do not have a recent data. Where is the recent data to show that there is surplus water in the river Ken? Right? Because earlier, back in the year 2017 and 2018, certain correspondence, certain letters were written to the government arguing that the plan, this particular river linking plan, is based on the argument that there is very high amount of water in Ken River. But compared to that time period, now the river water in the Ken has subsided. It is much lesser. So where is the recent data? You do not have a recent data to basically back up this river linking project. Third criticism, when you develop these projects, it will lead to displacement of population. It will lead to displacement of certain population. That is, when you construct dams, right? Let's say there will be, right, water which will be standing beside or before the dam, or the dam will basically hold water like this. But that backwater will also mean that lot of, let's say, villages or small hamlets where people are residing, they might be submerged because of the dam project now. So there will be displacement of lot of the population. Right, so these are some of the very important criticisms that have been leveled by various experts against this kind of a river linking project. But anyways, you have a balanced approach. You tell what are the advantages or the benefits of such project along with what are the criticisms. Done? Okay, right, so this is one more very important article. Let me go to the fourth article. Teenage girls' bold stand against child marriage sparks reforms in Rajasthan village. Why is this important? In the GS paper 1, there is a social issues debate or social issues topic. One of the very important social issue that is plaguing India even today, after many decades of independence, is the problem of the child marriage. It is a problem of the child marriage. In many parts of India, even today, there is a certain acceptance regarding child marriage. And in certain regions, it is actually celebrated. It has got a social acceptance where people participate, celebrate child marriages. If this is happening on one side, on the other side, Government of India again and again has argued against child marriage. In fact, to reduce the incidences of child marriage, Government of India has made it illegal under Teen Marriages Act of 1955 and has decided, right, basically using the provisions of Prohibition of Child Marriages Act. Because of these kind of laws, we have made child marriage illegal, and we also have decided what should be the minimum age of marriage. Right? There are, right, let's say categorization like this. For, let's say, boys or men, it should be 21 year. For a female, it should be 18 year. So any marriage where the children are there, that is a girl below the age of 18 years is involved in the marriage, it is basically a child marriage. And there are certain problems associated with child marriage. For example, right, the argument is this is one of the biggest human rights violation. It's a violation against the rights of an individual. In addition to that, in lot of the cases, when these children grow, when they grow and when they have the maturity, they will realize that the marriage is not compatible. the other partner is not compatible. Right? In addition to this, there is also a problem of teenage pregnancies associated with, let's say, even the childbirth, whether the child, let's say the weight of the child will be correct or not. And so there are a lot of problems associated with child marriages. But according to the data sets, according to a data, that is a National Family Health Survey 5, in case of India, around 23.5%, right? Make a note of this, around 23.3% of the, let's say, the respondents who are in a age group have admitted that they were married when they were below the age of 18 years. These women were married when they were below the age of 18 years. And that is the precise reason the government of India has also accepted this. And in the month of November 2024, government of India has launched an initiative by the name of Bala Vivaha Mukt Bharat. Bala Vivaha Mukt Bharat. Please remember this. And to ensure the child marriages will be discouraged, right? Basically, the government also has set up a portal by the name of Child Marriage Free Bharat portal. But what is the issue here? Why there are high incidences of child marriage in India? You need to understand that. Basically, the problem arises because in lot of these cases where child marriages are done, the family is very poor. The family is very poor. Essentially, we'll see there is, let's say one bread earner, but the number of dependents are very, very high. The number of children in the family are also very, very high. And when this particular person who is the sole bread earner will start feeling the burden of feeding so many people and also taking care of increasing or mounting debt, which is generally the precursor to all of this, the person will basically feel that it is better to get the child married off now itself. Right? And that is exactly what has been provided in this article as well. Although this is a case study, there's a person who has been quoted. I'll not quote the name, don't worry. And it is not required for exams as well. There's a person, and this person has 4 girl children, all of them below the age of 18 years. Because there was a mounting debt, the person basically arranged marriages on the same day. This is one more practice in India. On the same day, all the 4 girl children below the age of 18 years were supposed to be married off. But out of these 4 girls, one basically approached an NGO. Right? She approached an NGO, mustered courage, approached an NGO, and this NGO went to the father of the 4 girl children and educated the person, warned the person regarding what will be the repercussions, the penalty, the punishment, etc. And that is how this particular marriage was cancelled. But much more importantly, there is one argument here. You should mention that in the exams. That is, in order to ward off, in order to prevent these kind of evil outcomes from happening, you need whole of government approach. Whole of government approach. That is, all the stakeholders in the system, should participate. Right? What is this whole of government approach? Here is a case study where the NGO has come to the rescue, and NGO also has ensured that this person who is very, very poor, who is feeling the burden of rising debt, is also getting wage opportunity. I hope you understand. He is also getting, right, employed somewhere. Because please understand, today you can go prevent the marriage from happening. But you always cannot ensure that this will not happen after 1 month, after 2 months, after 3 months. This despite, I hope you understand, this despite having laws and regulations where there are provisions which say if the panchayat knows, right, if the village panchayat or village head knows that there is a child marriage that is happening, if they don't prohibit this, they will be held responsible. Despite having these kind of provisions, even today we are seeing child marriages in India. So what should be the way forward? What should be the solution? You have understood the problem. What should be the recommendation? You recommend that there should be a whole of government approach. That is, all the stakeholders should ensure that this is not practiced, but much more importantly, what is the precursor? What is the starting point of all of this? The family is very poor. And how do you address this kind of issue? Ensure that there are certain initiatives or ensure that there are job opportunities made available for these kind of, let's say, families which are facing the burden, which are facing financial pressures, so that they will not basically take a recourse to marrying their children off like this. Done? So this is one more very important article as far as I am concerned. Please remember this initiative of the central government. This has been launched very recently after the success of Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. This is one more initiative where basically government is talking about the women empowerment. Okay, done. Next article, H1B visa. I've taken this article from Indian Express because in recent times there is something very interesting that is happening in USA, and there is a connection with India. There is a particular connection with India. Why? There are multiple types of visas which are issued by the USA government. But one such visa which is important for India is H1B visa. Under this, various experts, that is, let's say, people with certain skill sets, they can get the visa, go to USA and contribute to the economic activity that is taking place in USA. But in case of United States of America, there is a lot of discussion that is happening regarding people migrating from one country into USA and snatching away, taking away the opportunities which should be made available for Americans. Essentially, the platform of the president-elect, Mr. Donald Trump, the very platform was built on the concept of America first. Essentially meaning, when the job opportunities are available in America, it should be first offered to Americans. But when you have these kind of visas, when you have these kind of opportunities where people can migrate, where people can reside in USA, get visas and start contributing, the job opportunities which are available to the residents, to the original citizens of America will come down. That is the argument. Right? And I hope you understand now the complexity of the issue. The groups which are supporting Mr. Donald Trump, essentially these are called as MAGA, M-A-G-A, Make America Great Again. When he contested the elections back in 2016, right, there is a large section of the society, citizens of America, who supported Mr. Donald Trump. They are basically called as original MAGA, right, or far right MAGA. But on the other side, now when he contested elections again in 2024, there are new kinds of members, new kinds of, let's say, tech tycoons, CEOs, etc., who supported his bid for elections. One of them was Mr. Elon Musk. Another is Mr. Vivek, etc., who supported, and they were very important in terms of arguing in favor of him and ensuring that he won the elections. But now understand, as expected, now there are frictions between these two groups. That is the far right group and these, right, let's say the new supporters of Mr. Donald Trump. And the argument is very simple here. Very recently, Donald Trump announced that, right, Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy will be heading a particular department along with Elon Musk to reduce, right, let's say government employees or the government administrative numbers. That will essentially save a lot of money because we are removing people, we are cutting down the regulations, we are reducing the administrative workforce. That will save a lot of money for the government. But in addition to this, there was one more announcement done by Mr. Donald Trump that is associated with artificial intelligence. That is, there is a tech entrepreneur in USA by the name of Mr. Sriram Krishnan, very well-known venture capitalist, by the way. Mr. Sriram Krishnan. Donald Trump announced that Mr. Sriram Krishnan will be heading the department to basically promote, right, the usage of AI. When this announcement was done, certain sections of the supporters, the far right supporters, argued that why more and more, right, let's say people from India, I repeat, people from India Why are they being, basically appointed to head departments under the USA government? Is it not again opposed to the idea of America first? Why are these not positions being offered or given to Americans? Why Indians moving into America are being offered these kind of positions? And that is where the difference in the opinion of these supporters came into fore. And so argument was, you are giving these positions to immigrants then. I hope you understand. You are basically providing all of these important positions in the government to immigrants. Why not to Americans? And opposing this, Mr. Elon Musk has argued that he is also an immigrant. Because of H-1B visa, he was able to move to America, or because of the visa system, he was able to move to America and become a part of contribution to economic activity. So argument here which has been put forward is very simple. There is a shortage of the people, or let's say the technical people who are required in certain sectors in the economy. That is specifically in America. And that is the precise reason these are arguing in favor of H-1B visa. And right here itself, understand this as well. In the context of H-1B visa, majority of the visas or the applicants whose visas have been approved under this category, these are Indians, by the way. According to the data set for financial year 23, that is for 2023, out of 2.6 lakh H-1B visas which were approved by the government, more than 70% are from India. And it should not be surprising to you when you know that out of these, majority of them are basically allocated to software engineers who are working in software tech companies such as Infosys, Wipro, etc. Right, so these are certain important points. And one more very important point, remember this. For 25, this was announced very recently. For 25, essentially the limit, the number of H-1B visa limit is 65,000. 65,000, point number one. But in addition to 65,000, additional 20,000 can also be issued if they are, basically the graduate holders from American institutions. So 65,000 plus 20,000, point number one. And point number two, very recently, the Biden government has announced certain relaxations regarding application for H-1B visas. What do you mean by relaxations regarding H-1B visa application? There are certain job opportunities which are covered. If you have these kind of jobs or the skills, only then you are allowed to apply for visas under H-1B. That coverage of the jobs, or categories of the jobs has been widened, has been expanded by the Biden government. So these are the three very important things that are there in the newspaper in association with H-1B visa. Okay. Now, one more important article. Again, I'll just give a summary of this because in the last 1 month, I'm pretty sure you have come across multiple articles where they are discussing what should be or what will be the agenda of the new Donald Trump presidency. Important points are as following. Point number one, when Mr. Donald Trump will become the president, it is expected that the government will conduct a lot of rounds of basically deporting undocumented workers. Mass deportation are expected to be done when he takes over the role of the president. There are two very important things here. When you look at the first presidency or first term of Mr. Trump, at that point of time also, deportations were being conducted. And generally, there is a lot of discussion regarding illegal migrants or immigrants into USA. But the article simply says, what will be the cost of the deportations? What will be the expenditure? Because mind you, you can even connect this to Indian economy as well or Indian situation. There is a discussion regarding deporting a lot of these people who have migrated from Bangladesh into India during certain period of time. But when you conduct these kind of operations, don't you think that will lead to expenditure? And who will basically provide for this expenditure for the government? It has to be the taxpayer. So now the question arises, if as promised, if the new government will conduct deportations, what will be the overall cost of the deportations? That is the point number one. Point number two, once Mr. Trump becomes the president, it is also expected that the tariffs, again and again we have been discussing regarding the tariffs. So tariffs would be reimposed in the sense, in some of the goods, the new president has argued that he will be imposing very high amount of tariff. In fact, according to the speeches given by Donald Trump, he will be targeting over $3 trillion worth of merchandises, that is the goods which are entering into USA, and will be slapping very high amount of tariff. Now the question is, majority of these goods are intermediary goods. Majority of them are intermediary goods. Intermediary goods essentially are the inputs which are used in manufacturing of other goods. So if all the intermediary goods are targeted as promised by Trump, don't you think that will further increase the cost of production in the domestic market, which will increase the prices of these commodities, for which again Americans will have to pay more money? There is already a concern regarding the consumption in the market. Point number three, what will be the, let's say, policy regarding taxation? Back in the 2017, when he was the president in the first term, he had reduced the taxes. For example, the corporate tax rate, which was 35%, was reduced to 21%. The objective was to basically attract investment in the domestic market. But the benefit of majority benefits of this tax rate cut, as per various studies, have been shown to be concentrating amongst the rich people. That is, the top 1% of the population have got majority of the benefit, and the bottom 50% of the population has got very, very less benefit in the form of, let's say, lower amount of taxes that they are paying. So the argument here is, if the taxes are further going to be announced, or let's say reforms are going to be announced, will they be implemented in the same way that were implemented earlier, where the benefits were skewed in terms of contribution to rich and poor? That is one more point. Fourth very important point is, as earlier mentioned, there is a new department that has been proposed, DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. It is supposed to be headed by Mr. Elon Musk as well as Mr. Vivek. Now, their argument is, the administration that is present at the federal level, it's very, very high. The numbers of people are very, very high. And we have unnecessary regulations because of, right, let's say all of this, which is hindering economic activity, which is hindering investment, etc. So their idea is, once we come to power, we will have a look at the administrative mechanism in India, or let's say the structure in India, and we are going to have a restructuring of all of this. So be ready for mass layoff, be ready for, right, people to be fired from the job, and all of this will essentially lead to reduced expenditure for the government. So, right, what is the issue associated with, right, this kind of a reform? As of now, there is no, let's say, framework. On what basis they are going to cut down the number of administrative workforce? Will it be targeted to some of the sectors where, right, let's say, a lot of these billionaires have made investment? In fact, one of the article basically argued that one of the targets for DOGE will be the administrative authority which is basically testing the, let's say, the cars, which is basically testing the cars. And if this administrative authority is dissolved, then there is no regulation, there is no authority which will test the safety of the cars. In fact, if this is done, it is said that Mr. Elon Musk, who owns one more company which is involved in manufacturing of these automobile, or let's say electric vehicles, will be having huge amount of gains. So these are some of the things that have been mentioned in the context of Trump's second presidency, what we can expect out of this. Okay. Now next one, NMHC, right? Please understand, NMHC stands for National Maritime Heritage Complex. National Maritime Heritage Complex. Now, there is an initiative of the central government by the name of Sagarmala Initiative. Sagarmala Initiative. Under the Sagarmala Initiative, there are multiple components. For example, have a look at this. There is a component of developing ports or restructuring of the existing ports. There is a component of developing coastal industrial centers, etc. So there are multiple pillars, to be very precise, 4 pillars under the Sagarmala Initiative. And under this initiative, now Government of India has announced one of the maritime projects, one of the largest in the world to be very precise, by the name of National Maritime Heritage Complex. And this National Maritime Heritage Complex is proposed to be developed at a place called as Lothal. Please remember the name of this particular place. Why? Those who have read history, they will know this. Lothal is one of the very important sites under Indus Valley Civilization, IVC, one of the very important sites under IVC. In fact, the Lothal, as imagined, Lothal had a port, used to conduct a lot of trade with the external market, other countries as well. So, the Lothal as a place is very well known. Lot of excavation has been conducted by the survey organization, the Archaeological Survey Authority of India in this particular place. Right? So, this place historically is relevant. Now, government says at this particular place itself, we are going to develop a particular complex. This complex will basically showcase the heritage, the culture. It will promote the maritime, let's say, the activities that have been taken place or that have been taking place in India. Right? So, regarding this, right, the phase-wise expenditure, the 2-phase, etc. points are given. That is not important. What is important is the name of the place, importance under Indus Valley Civilization, and what is being proposed by the government. Okay, done. Now, next one. The LG of Delhi has asked police to probe AAP's data collection by private people. What is the importance of this article? If I come to your home and ask you certain information, that is personal information, let's say your mobile number, your Aadhaar number, right? And I'll basically say, I've come from the government, please fill the form and give the data to me. Should you do this? Right? What is the guarantee that I'm a representative of government only? What if I'm, right, basically masking as a government employee, but I'm not a government employee. I want to misuse your data. I want to basically sell your data to somebody else in the market, etc. All the possibilities are there. That's a reason whenever, right, you have certain sensitive information, you are not supposed to share that information with anybody else. Now, in case of Delhi, what is happening is, right, quite concerning. Concerning because the fact that there are certain people who are going to households in Delhi and they're seeking the Delhiites to fill in the form and submit the form to them or give the form back to them, where certain sensitive information, personal information is being collected. Now, what is the background to all of this? The background is very simple. There are elections which are announced in Delhi. The government there, right, that is formed by AAP, Aam Aadmi Party, very recently has announced an initiative, Mahila Samman Yojana. Okay. Under this initiative, the government has basically stated that they will be providing 1,000 rupees. They will be providing 1,000 rupees to identified beneficiaries, that is essentially women. And if they, right, let's say win elections, because the elections are happening, if they win elections and come to power again, they argue that, or they have promised that this will be increased to 2,100 rupees. But for the implementation of the scheme, now it is said that the volunteers of this political party are going to households in Delhi and they're giving the application form and collecting the sensitive or let's say personal information of women. In fact, the WCD, Women and Child Development or Department, in fact, it has basically stated that people are not supposed to give any kind of a form or fill any kind of a form in a physical way. They have argued that they will set up a portal. The process will be made online, and through online itself, all the details that are needed will be collected by the government. But here what is happening? There are instances where people are going to households and collecting this information. What is the guarantee that this will be given only to government? And there are instances, there is an allegation that even the private person who are not associated with the political party are collecting this information. So against all of this, the LG has asked Delhi police to conduct a probe. Now this has also taken a political angle. You do not worry about the political angle. You be focused on only the data protection or privacy protection angle. Okay. Now, right, one more article, small article that is associated with the private healthcare. But what caught my attention in this article are the points which have been provided. I'll be focused on three important points from this article. One, the article simply says, according to the World Bank, there are 129 million people in India who belong to extreme poverty, who are extremely poor. Now, what do you mean by extremely poor? Be very careful. Extremely poor essentially means, according to World Bank definition, if a person is not able to earn $2.15 a day, if you are not able to basically spend $2.15 a day and you are spending less than that, you are classified as extremely poor. Extremely poor. Earlier it was $1.9. It has been changed to $2.15. Right? This is point number one. Point number two, the article also has quoted one more point of information. That is, Niti Aayog report says that annually, because of high healthcare expenditure, high out-of-the-pocket healthcare expenditure, more than 10 crore people are falling into poverty. And in this case, there is a petition in the Supreme Court of India by a non-profit organization asking effective implementation of certain policies. And their argument is, there is already a law in India, Clinical Establishments Act of 2010, CEA, Clinical Establishments Act of 2010. In fact, this was there in the newspaper last year, even this year, in the context of Punjab and Delhi. So according to the Clinical Establishments Act, there are a lot of regulations which are supposed to be followed by private healthcare sector. But the argument here is, there is no proper implementation of the provision. There is no, right, let's say, uniform implementation of the provision. That's the reason the private healthcare sector or the companies in the private healthcare sector, they are charging very high amount of money. They are charging, let's say, they are basically imposing a lot of burden, financial burden on the poor population. Okay. So these are the points from this article that you need to take away. Finally, last article, very small article. Bangladesh National Party has criticized Mr. Mohammad Yunus, the caretaker, the head of the caretaker government, regarding his plan to reduce the voting age in Bangladesh. Because mind you, Bangladesh is supposed to conduct elections either at the end of 2025 or in the beginning of 26. But now, he has proposed that the voting age should be reduced from 18 years to 17 years. And I hope you understand this. This lower voting age is nothing new as such. There are many countries around the world. For example, in countries such as Brazil, right, Argentina, etc., the voting age is, 16 years. So his argument is, we should reduce the voting age from 18 years to 17 years so that more of youth population will participate. They'll be able to cast their vote and decide who will be forming the government. It will be the will of this kind of a population. And this is his argument. But against this argument, there is a criticism. The criticism is, why this has been proposed now? If you propose to change the age or reduce the age from 18 to 17, now the election authority will have to prepare a fresh roll of electorates. They will have to basically find out who are these people who are basically becoming part of voters now. right? So the list has to be changed. That will increase the expenditure, also the time that is required to conduct elections. So this will increase the complexity, and that is the reason they are arguing that this is a ploy. This is basically, right, let's say a ploy or a plan which has been proposed by him to delay the elections, right? So these are certain important points associated with the article. Now, before I go forward, please do let me know either in the chat section or in the comment section, what is the minimum legal age to vote in India? What is the minimum legal age to vote in India? Okay. So, MCQ 54, let me discuss the key answers now. Consider the following statements. Cereals have around 46% in the CPI basket. Wrong, right? It is wrong. Why? Cereals do not have 46%. Mind you, the food and beverages have 46%. Food and beverages have 46%. The CPI is published by Ministry of Commerce. Absolutely wrong. CPI is published by MOSPI. WPI is published by Ministry of Commerce. CPI and WPI basket includes goods as well as services. Even this is wrong. CPI includes the services. WPI doesn't include services. Okay. Right. So essentially, the right option for the question will be option D, none of the above. Consider the following statements. The Panama Canal connects the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. Yes. It is managed by ACP, that is Panama Canal Authority. Yes. It was developed by French authorities who handed it over to Panama. No. Right. It was not developed by French. It was developed by US authorities. Okay. So first and second are correct. Right option will be option B. Last 2 minutes I'll take. Some of the students had raised questions in the comment section of my previous video. I'll just address those questions and then we can wind the session. And by the way, even if you have any questions, do leave that in the comment section. I'll take up and address your question tomorrow. Sir, when you again take a class, explain SDR. What is SDR? I believe you're talking about units which are issued by the IMF, right? International Monetary Fund. STR essentially is a reserve asset which is issued by IMF to all its member countries. And how much STR, that is special drawing rights, how many units are issued depends on the quota. Quota represents a number which is calculated based on the formula which is calculated based on 4 parameters. Right? So STR is a reserve asset. That is essentially whenever you conduct transactions with IMF, it is quoted in the form of STR. Bring out the role of central bank as the controller of money, supply or credit. My dear, whenever you talk about RBI, through various tools which are available with RBI, right? For example, let's say repo rate, right? Or for that matter, CRR, for that matter, SLR, etc. Using multiple types of tools, RBI can essentially change the amount of money supply that is taking place in the Indian economy. Okay. And by the way, if you need a one-shot video regarding Reserve Bank of India, please do let me know. RBI is very, very important. Can you explain credit guarantee scheme for ENWR based pledge financing? Very recently, this initiative was announced by the government, that is Ministry of Agriculture. The value of the scheme is allocation under the scheme is 1,000 crore. The government of India essentially saying here, when the farmer will pledge and right, basically pledge means what? So, let's say will show the negotiable warehouse receipt and borrow from a bank. If the farmer doesn't repay, Government of India will be repaying that using this account, using this credit guarantee scheme. That is essentially the credit guarantee scheme here. This will ensure more and more banks will give loans to farmers. This will ensure farmers will deposit food grains and be not worried about getting access to institutional credit, which will also help in preventing distress sale done by the farmers. Okay. And one more question, is a DD and a check of fiat money or not? Please explain. DD and checks are not fiat money. Fiat money essentially means the money which is issued through the order of the government, which carries the order of the government. Right? For example, the currency notes that you have, This is fiat money that is issued through the order. Okay. On the other side, DD and the check, these are fiduciary monies, not fiat money. Done? Right. So these were the questions which were there in the comment section of my previous video. That's it from my side in today's session. Tomorrow, again, we will meet sharp at 10 a.m. If you like this initiative, please do hit the like button. And if you're yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.